All right, today we are diving into Samuel Beckett's Endgame. Now, this is one of the 20th century's most famously difficult plays, but it's also considered absolutely brilliant. It's the kind of play that has left audiences both scratching their heads and totally fascinated for decades. And today, we're going to try and break down what exactly makes it tick. Finished. It's finished. Nearly finished. It must be nearly finished. That's the very first line of the play, spoken by a character named Clav. And right from the get-go, Beckett just drops us into this world that feels, well, uncertain and repetitive. It hints at this ending that's always just around the corner but never actually shows up. And honestly, that single sentence sets the tone for everything we're about to see. So, how are we going to make sense of all this? Well, here's the plan. First, we'll look at this strange room at what feels like the end of the world. Then, we'll meet the last 4 people who are stuck there. After that, we'll get into what they actually do all day, what this endgame is that they're playing. Then, we'll dig into the big question, what does all this nothing mean? And finally, we'll ask why on earth this incredibly grim play is still so important today.
All right, part 1, A Room at World's End. Let's talk about the setting for this stark and frankly bizarre play. Because trust me, in Endgame, the where is just as crucial as the who.
So, picture this. The whole play happens in one single, bare, gray room. That's it. You've got 2 tiny windows way up high, and 2 big ash bins. It's a really strange setup. You get the sense that it's a shelter, sure, but it's also totally a prison. And, through those windows, we learn that the world outside is, and this is the word they use, corpsed. Just dead. A gray, lifeless wasteland.
And what that means is they are completely and utterly stuck. There's no way in, and there's no way out. This creates this incredible sense of entrapment. And, this physical prison is really a powerful metaphor for their mental state, right? Their psychological and existential state. They are, quite literally, at the end of the world, trapped in what might be the very last room on Earth.
So who are these last 4 people playing out this final game? Let's meet the very strange inhabitants of this tiny universe.
Okay, at the very center of everything is Ham. Think of him as the blind king of this dead world. He can't stand up, so he's always in this armchair on wheels. And he is a total tyrant, bossy, demanding, but also completely dependent on his servant Clove.
And then there's Clav. Clav is the one who does everything for Ham, pushes his chair, looks out the windows, gets him things. He's always complaining, always threatening to leave, but he never does. And here's the perfect Beckettian twist. While Ham can't stand, Clav literally cannot sit down.
And if that wasn't weird enough for you, meet Ham's parents, Nag and Nell. And this is probably the most bizarre detail of the whole play. They don't have any legs, and they live inside 2 huge ash bins over on the side of the stage. Yeah, you heard me right. They just pop out every now and then to talk about the past or ask for a biscuit. They're like these fading ghosts of a world that's long gone.
So you see what's going on here, right? They're all locked in this really weird, unbreakable cycle of dependency. Ham needs Clove to be his eyes and legs. Clove, for whatever reason, seems to need Ham to have some kind of purpose. And Nag and Nell, well, they need both of them just to survive. The crazy thing is, they can't stand each other, but they absolutely cannot live without each other.
Okay, so if they're just stuck in this room together, what do they actually do? What is this so-called game that they're all playing?
Well, the answer is they don't really do much of anything. At least, not in the way we'd normally think about a play's plot. There's no big rising action or climax. Instead, the whole thing is built out of these repetitive routines, these pointless little rituals they do day in and day out just to make the time pass.
Here is a perfect example of what I mean. Every single day, Ham orders Clove to look out the windows. So Clove has to drag a stepladder over, climb up, look through his telescope, and every single day the report is exactly the same. 0, 0, and 0. Nothing. Then Ham asks for his painkiller, and Clove has to tell him again that there isn't any left. It's this little ritual they have to confirm just how hopeless everything is.
Ham says this at one point, and it just cuts right to the heart of the play. They know exactly how this story ends, or more accurately, how it doesn't end. Nothing is ever going to change. The beginning is the end is the beginning, and yet, for some unexplainable reason, they just go on. So, all of this brings us to the really big question. If it's just 4 people repeating pointless stuff in a gray room, what is this play actually about?
This is the question that literally everyone asks when they see this play. And the answer is, nothing happening is the point. Beckett is basically asking, what does it mean to be human when all the usual reasons for living, progress, love, making something of yourself, what happens when all that is stripped away?
You see, Endgame is a classic example of a movement called the theater of the absurd. Plays like this threw out traditional storytelling because they wanted to show what it felt like to live in a world, especially after the World Wars, that seemed totally illogical and meaningless. They put that feeling right up on stage for everyone to see.
And this chart shows you exactly how different it is. A normal play builds the action up to a big climax, right? Well, Endgame just gives you repetition and stasis, this feeling of being completely stuck. And instead of a nice, tidy resolution at the end, it just leaves you waiting. When you boil it all down, the play uses this really bizarre world to explore some huge ideas. It's about time feeling like a loop, about trying to find meaning when there isn't any. It's about how words kind of fail us. And it's about the desperate and sometimes toxic ways we cling to each other just to get through another day.
Which brings us to our last section. Why is a play that sounds so bleak, so strange, considered one of the most important plays ever written?
To put it simply, Endgame just shattered all the rules. It proved that a play didn't need a normal plot or realistic characters to be incredibly powerful. It could be like poetry or philosophy or just a raw emotional punch to the gut. And that just blew the doors open for generations of artists and writers who came after.
I mean, when it first came out in 1957, people had no idea what to make of it. But by the 60s, it was the text for this whole new wave of theater. And today, it's a modern classic that gets put on all the time. Because that feeling of being trapped and waiting for a future you can't see, well, that feels more relevant now than ever.
And that's really why it matters, isn't it? We might not be living in Ashbins, but I think we can all relate to that feeling of being stuck in a routine, waiting for something to change, wondering what the whole point is sometimes. Endgame takes that universal human feeling and turns it into something haunting, unforgettable, and weirdly beautiful.
And that's the big question Beckett leaves hanging in the air. This human need to just go on, to tell our stories, play our little games, even when we're staring into the void. Is that a tragedy? Or is it maybe a strange, defiant, and beautiful thing? The play doesn't give us the answer. It leaves that one for us to figure out.